Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. So when earning that black belt, that's what comes inside of you by building that confidence within you that you can apply that in a pressure situation.
Mm.
If you've just got the black belt, you've never been in that pressure situation. You don't have the experience of what that black belt means. And that's exactly what this concept of knowledge is. It gives you a false sense of confidence that you know what the hell you're talking about when you do not.
Today's guest is David Olcott, lifelong martial artist, Aikido practitioner, executive coach, founder of Samurai Success, and author of Swords of Illumination. In this episode, we explore how Aikido and Shugyō principles shape leadership, balance, and decision making in life and business, and why knowledge only matters when it's lived, not just learned. Let's get started. Hello, David. Welcome to the Shugyō Podcast.
Swire, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Same here. I've been doing all my notes. I've been studying. I've been going through some of the chapters in your book. But before we start the conversation, I'd love to find out more from the beginning, right? How did you start martial arts and how did that come into life and what drew you towards Aikido?
So early in my life, I really had a challenging growing up in where I grew up in the Florida Keys. You think it's, very much a paradise, which it is. It's absolutely gorgeous. But we had a lot of things going on. And I definitely had a relationship with my father that was very combative and things like this. I wanted to be able to figure out how to fight and protect myself. That was my first inclination about getting involved in martial arts. And of course, after I evolved in understanding what martial arts really is for me, it's about the art of not fighting. So when you really feel good about who you are, Swire, you no longer have to fight. You're no longer having to prove yourself. People get a sense of you and they don't want to fight that anymore, right? They're like, whoa, wait a minute here. Maybe I shouldn't mess with this energy or person or whatever that is. And I will tell you, developing that feeling, that characteristic within me is what has been so powerful for me so that we can get past this let's fight with each other thing and really get to the solutions of things.
I know you've been training for quite a long time. But at what point you come to conclusion that you don't want to fight? And obviously, when you said in the beginning, you do want to fight.
Oh yes, as a matter of fact, I was like, "Come on, let's fight." I don't say that with a lot of pride. I know I'm being fun with it, but there was some time in my life I fought a lot, and I really wanted to move away from that place because I see that in today's world, right? Even in corporate America and around the world in corporation businesses. That we tend to do this fight with I hit you, you hit me, and whoever hits harder gets to win the fight. I really wanted to take a different approach to it. And that's where I found the art of Aikido. The art of Aikido is more about blending with people than it is about combat with people. It is combat, don't get me wrong, but it has an aspect of going, I notice you're attacking me and I'm going to blend with that energy, see it from your perspective and see if we can come to a solution as opposed to beating the crap out of each other.
I really like that, and you're right. In real life too, if someone push you, you push them back, and then you got into a fight which accomplished nothing. Especially in business, like you could be lawsuit, you could be grumpy, you could not do anything but be mad at someone. But rather, there are ways that you could quickly turn around or quickly shift that could make to your advantage, and the other will win too. Like it's like a win-win. That's what. In the beginning too in business I do wanted to fight a lot of clients unfortunately.
Yes, sir.
But now you can't win a client. You lose a client, you might win, but it's not what you want to do.
As a matter of fact, they didn't come there for the fight. They may show up like they want to fight, but that's all coming from scarcity or fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you really get past the mask of combat and you really see what's really going on, that's where I think the martial arts has really helped me the most is stepping back, realizing I can take care of myself. I can deal with most situations. And once I have that knowingness about me, I can get past whether I can beat this person up or not. And I can really focus on, hey, what's really going on here? I can step back and observe what's happening as opposed to be hooked into what's happening. And I really agree with what you're saying is not only in personal life, but in business, these things go together because there's always people involved. So wherever there's people involved, there's going to be a natural conflict. But for the person who can be in that room, in that conflict, and actually see past the mask of the combat and the fear and see there's a potential solution, that's the person who's going to set the win-win scenario.
Hmm. Over the year, you have trained under some incredible teachers. Looking back, what did each phase of your training give you?
Yeah, there's this thing called a learning curve where you
Hmm.
kind of come into something and there's this thing called forming and storming and norming, performing, and then transforming. So that's what my martial art experience has really shared with me, is that when you go into a new subject that you never knew before. And in 1991, when I'd never studied martial arts, I'd studied Shotokan karate when I was really young, but I really had forgotten most of the stuff. Really, my art really started in when I was really in Aikido. And, it was quite a learning curve because a lot of the people in the room were already, very good at what they were doing. So I really took away a single principle about going into the learning curve, which has served me so much, Swire, in my life, which is when you're going into the learning curve, the very first thing that kicks you out of the learning curve is when you start judging something or being the expert or something, or thinking you're the teacher, or being someone who really is looking at things from, oh, I already know this. So martial arts has given me this concept of the world, which is if I go into the world and imagine that world is my dojo, then I cannot go in as the teacher anymore, the expert. I'm going in as the student.
Hmm.
If I remain the student, then things really happen very fast. I can see that. Now, most of my life, and I think most of our lives in training, is like, no, you got to be the master, you got to be the teacher, you got to be the expert. I'm like, well, that's not working for me, right? So let's do something different. And the student concept has been phenomenal throughout the ages of my martial arts training for the last 30 years, kind of thing, that just said, stay the student. So even today, I'm 58 years old. I walk into that place with a second degree black belt, working on my third degree black belt. I am the student. That black belt only says you're here to learn something. And I will
Hmm.
tell you, it's a magical formula for success.
That's a really good mindset. You're the perfect person to ask this question. The name of the podcast is Shugyō, and I know that Aikido talk a lot about different types of Shugyō. So, in when you hear that word, what does it mean to you personally?
So I understand that developing character, right, is fundamental in that concept that you just talked about, is really about staying in that place. And developing that character is whether you want to be the teacher, the sensei, and be the expert in something, or be the student in something, or a mixture of both those things. Character for us is creating an identity. And identity is the beginning of all things. It's your most powerful belief system, and it rules your entire existence, because every meaning, every perception, every perspective that you're going to have in this lifetime and how you experience life comes from that identity. For example, if I say that I'm a person that's a glass half empty person, or if I say I'm a person who's a glass half full person, I'm going to have very different experiences of life based upon that identity. And I really think that fits into that concept very beautifully.
Yeah, I think in life too, a lot of times something have not happened, but it's how you think, your mindset that determine the outcome already. Because you haven't even gone, let's say for example, a job interview, you or even having in sales ask for that sale. If you think you lose and oh no, they're not going to give it to me, or whatever that might be, going to combat, I'm going to lose, then you already have lost. It's I think like our mind is always playing games with us, and sometimes they win.
As a matter of fact, most of the time they win, right? So I agree with you. I agree. So the beginning of that mindset and then skill set, tool set that we teach here at Samurai Success is really about understanding your belief systems rule your world, because the power that we have as human beings that no other species on this planet or galaxy have, Swire, is that we have the ability to create meaning. No other species on this planet or galaxy does this. So this is the big power and gift for ourselves, and it's also the biggest challenge.
Mm.
The center point of being able to create that meaning is your identity statement, the belief in you.
During our conversation prior, you mentioned that you have been through injuries, there are setbacks, and have you point out, we're getting older every day. What's keep you committed with all this year, and you keep coming back after 30 years of training?
So what keeps me coming back? There's kind of three perspectives that I've seen and observed in this lifetime, is that you can live your life for other people, you can live your life for yourself, or you can live your life because it represents who you are. And that's where I've chosen to live my life, It's a place that I really find profoundness in, a level of mastery that I've always felt really good with. So the reason I train isn't for impressing anybody else. Most people won't even know, if they ever met me, they won't know that I've studied this thing for 30 years or how my lineage that you know so beautifully, right? They're not going to know those things because it's not a story I'm going to tell you. It's a story that creates who I am. And
Mm.
that identity for myself is how I show up in the world. So I do that training. I go and I work out 6 days a week. 3 of those days a week is martial arts. 3 of those days is training. I have to keep my body ready for that martial arts, experience and that combat, which happens. So I have to be able to be religious and ritualistic around keeping my health as best I can. And I certainly don't want to be this wealthy as I am this lifetime without having my health, because without the health, everything is over. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's another form of balance, right? People focus on the business, whatever career that they're working on, and then they don't focus on their health until later. If you start later, you might or might not be as lucky as you are if you start from the beginning. You keep it up at place. Just attend your business, your accounting, for example. You got to make sure your bookkeeping is right, everything is right. Then
Yes,
you have a happier time around tax season. But if you don't care about it, then you'll find out the hard way.
Oh, that's so beautifully said, man. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things that our clients struggle with us most, because they don't like math. They don't like accounting. They love money, but they don't like the way
Mhm.
to be able to track that money, right? So it's a really interesting thing that once we show them, and through a personal verified experience, right? You just can't tell somebody that because they're never going to listen to you. But once they have that personal verified coaching experience with us, that by doing these things on a quarterly basis, all of a sudden tax season becomes easy and effortless, as opposed to now in the midst of having to be able to get to a rush deadline of the IRS tax deadline, I'm going to take that box of receipts that I've been holding on to and then start scanning those out. And you spend hours and days and you're frustrated and you're mad, as opposed to just chunking it down over the year. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, this was easy. Why didn't I do it before? Well, now I'll take that approach to everything else in life.
Yeah. You talk about martial art taught you not to fight. Can you think about an example that how Aikido has helped you ship away from conflicts?
Yeah, well, I could give you an every single day situation because listen, our entrepreneurs are very wealthy people. And if they haven't been wealthy, they become very wealthy people. And nothing makes somebody more combative than thinking they're successful. Nothing. Then you add the entrepreneurship. I know, you don't tell me. And it's about conflict constantly, combat constantly. So I already know that they're coming in with that mindset. I have to make sure that my mindset doesn't match that combat. It matches it in a way that just says, hey, let's blend with that a little bit so we can really get the best solution.
Mhm. Is there a lesson from Aikido that took you longer time to really understand?
Oh my gosh, every single one of it's amazing to me. And that's probably what's kept me so engaged with Aikido, because Aikido for me is such a mental art, right? It has all these body mechanics that go along with it that are so subtle that that's what the years of experience really help you develop. So you learn the fundamentals, the circles and the triangles and these kind of ideas, like, hey, you're going to move this way and you put your foot here and you have your hand here. And that body mechanics is really uncomfortable in the beginning. And then all of a sudden you get comfortable with that. Well, then there's the next layer of things, right? Where then all of a sudden you're starting to feel the other person's body and their balance points and those kind of things. And then you're starting to feel your balance points with those balance points. And then you're feeling, and the list just keeps going on and on, Swire, that it's such a level of commitment to be able to understand that there's always the next level. This is not something that you get to a certain level and you're done. That's where most people approach life. I just can't wait till I get to a place like I retire and I'm done. Really? That's your whole training is going to be about how you retire. So if you've been living a life of scarcity, when you retire, you're going to be still living that life of scarcity. It's
Mm,
about how you train your mind to really be able to be prepared for the next opportunity.
great. Thanks for sharing. Want to ask you about how you come up with the name of the business, Samurai Success. Is it from martial arts? Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when I was growing up in the church, the Methodist church, there's a gentleman, our pastor there. His name was John Smith, and I think I was like 9 or 10 years old. So it was like, and I was having this deep conversation. I don't know why, with this beautiful man in this group setting. And he said in that group setting, he said, there is no better life to live than a life of being in service of others. And for whatever reason, that really clicked with me. It was profound. It resonated with me. Now, 9 years old, I didn't do anything with it. Years later, I was actually in the sales game, and I read a book called Samurai Selling. And in that book, it referred to the word samurai, which of course, I was all fascinated with all kinds of, martial arts movies and things like that. I was like, samurai, yes. But in there, it talked about how loosely translated it means in service of others. I was like, there's the connection. So that was a great metaphor for creating my identity this lifetime about how I wanted to approach life, about how I truly wanted to be in service of others. Because for me, it's the greatest life I can live.
When did you realize that what you have learned in martial arts could actually help people in business and leadership?
That took a lot more time for me to see that connection. What I realized for me is that when I was going into business, my approach to business was very conflict oriented, right? You were saying that you knew, and I was telling you how many years of experience I had and all my expertise and everything else. And I was creating the combat. They were bringing the combat. I was responding to the combat. And then, it took a lot. It wasn't like overnight, man. It was just one of those things that just like, oh my gosh, I'm not applying Aikido in my business. And here I have this company called Samurai Success. Why am I not applying those two things? Have you ever learned something that's really profound, but you don't connect them, and then you do, and you're like, oh, and that's what happened for me. It was finding that connection of finding that balance point of being able to blend with people, because entrepreneurs are fabulous and famous for, if it isn't their idea, they're not going to do it. So I had to figure out a way to take all this expertise and knowledge I had, share it and remind it with them so that it became their idea so they could apply it.
Did you figure that out during work or during training in Aikido?
As a matter of fact, you have those down times in the shower, right? Where there's nobody else around, right? And you have those aha moments, right? Kind of thing where you're like, dun, 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 your mind's playing with you a little bit. And those, actually called the shower time. And that was just one of those clicks that wasn't in the dojo because I was too focused on what was going on in the dojo. I was too focused on what was going on at work. And the shower gave me the opportunity to really go, hey, what if there was a connection? What if they weren't separate from each other? And that was the breakthrough.
So we talk about balancing, right? And you mentioned a couple of times already, how you're able to, rather fighting, but by blending, by working together, right? To help your work. So how do you think, as a consultant, you could teach your coaching client, the way for blending, for not fighting? Entrepreneur with egos, we might want to fight, or you might have a particular client that, I'm never going to back down.
So an interesting way of taking a look at that is that when you don't know who you are, you're always going to be in a place of fear because you fear what you don't know. If you don't know you actually fear yourself. And then all of a sudden you apply that to everywhere else you go. So if you want to guarantee there's brownies at the Christmas party or holiday party, what do you bring to the Christmas party? You bring brownies, right? So the idea here is when you get to know yourself so well that no one can talk you out of it, including yourself, you really develop a level of mastery that conflict and fear isn't necessary anymore. You move past that. So when you go into a situation, and by the way, if you ever are in a situation where someone is just being really aggressive with you, that's because they're not really telling you the things they think they know. They're telling you what you think you should know about them, but it's not really confidence about them. So it's a great indicator that goes, no, there's something missing here. The people that go into situations who know who they are, they know their business, they know their numbers, they don't have to fight because you don't have to defend the truth. You start becoming a peaceful warrior.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And then I actually learned in a sales book, we have different personality. There are different way of communication. Maybe a lot of time, going back to martial art too, there are bigger opponent. There are more flexible or faster opponent that you have. There might be sometimes more skillful opponent that you'll be facing. You as a martial artist has to adapt and, to able to move quickly or maybe wait for your timing. I think it's the same in business, right? When you say the aggressive communication, I actually welcome that nowadays because they're actually telling me what they wanted to do. If I'm able to solve the pain point or solve whatever that they're trying to have me do, then I have a client. I think it's more challenging, in my opinion, for a client doesn't open up and doesn't tell me anything. I would rather they list out all the requirements that they have. And, I actually enjoy those better myself.
Oh, I totally agree. As a matter of fact, the reason why people open up to you is because you're a trustworthy person. You've really developed your character, man. You know who you are, and you're really there to be of service. But if you approach business like the art of war, like a lot of the art of war suggests kind of stuff, then you're in combat. Why the hell would I tell you about all the vulnerableness about me? Because war is about deceptiveness, right? It's about how I can deceive you into believing this as opposed to this. But if you approach business from that place of service, you're going to find a lot of your clients become much more vulnerable because they can trust you to not use the information they're about to give you against them. You're going to use that information to be in service of them. And I will tell you, that is a huge and profound difference.
From the books, the Swords of Illumination and Identity, you talk about the identity and closing the gap, who we say we are and how we actually live. Where does that idea come from?
So it's part of the spiritual connection that the masters have been teaching on this planet for centuries. This is not new information. It's what we found is that the sequencing is what's new to people. They didn't always combine them in the way the book does. And the first sword, of course, is about the sword of identity. Your most powerful belief is about who you say you are. So if you were going to take this identity about believing who you are, then you have to match the actions that you take that are congruent with that which you say you are. For example, if I say I'm a world-class athlete and I sit over on that couch and eat Cheetos, those two things don't go together. And I will tell you, a lot of us are living that congruently or consistent incongruency, and it's creating results from your life. And you've got to be able to understand that the universe rewards congruency. So here's the tough part about this. When you're a good person and you do good things that are in relationship to that, that creates congruency. If you're not a good person and you do things that are not good, it creates congruency. The universe rewards both those sets of congruency. It answers the question, why do sometimes bad people get really great results? Because they're being congruent. This is what's so important about that work in that book. It's a lifetime of my journey about understanding about all these key things, about how this place really works and how we actually influence it as a human being. And inside there, you're going to get some really great insights about that's why that works. That's how that happens. That's what I was missing. So it's a really fun journey.
I think that's a good example, and especially if you know the identity or right in our goal, what you're trying to achieve, the goal setting part is actually easier, because you have a direction. And what I like to do for myself a lot of time is I will set a goal instead of say, I can't do it today or whatever that might be. I can't do it today. That's why it's a goal, right? You haven't achieved yet. You're trying to do it, but rather than start from today, what if, let's say, I want to do this goal, in 1 year? Looking back, what I should have been done, or who do I need to know, or what do I need to learn for help me to achieve that goal? For myself, I found that will be a lot easier than I just look blank on a piece of paper on a computer, not knowing what to do.
So beautiful. As a matter of fact, it's so wonderful you brought that up because right now, here at the end of the year, we're going through a whole module system with all of our clients.
Yeah.
I'd like to share that with you if I can.
Yeah, of course.
And by the way, you just nailed one of the most important aspects that people don't realize about goal setting. When you set a goal, rather, that is not aligned with who you are, the chances of you reaching that goal are almost non-existent. It's not going to happen because it simply doesn't represent who you are. So the very first thing of goal setting is actually creating an identity statement, then setting a goal that aligns with that identity. Because if it doesn't, the chances of you following through with that are very nil. As a matter of fact, it's why most people stop reaching their goals by February of every year, right?
Yeah.
They start on January 1st, and by February it's out because it's not congruent with who they say they are. There's not a driving force. There's not a purpose. There's not a why or a fulfillment of something bigger, because the goal that you're setting is not going to create results right away. As a matter of fact, let's say you wanted to lose 30 pounds. You're not going to do that tomorrow. You're not going to do it by February. It may take you months, if not years, to be able to do that. What keeps you in the consistency with reaching that goal is because it aligns with who you are. It's the driving force, purpose, and motivation. If that isn't there, then you have to use willpower, discipline, emotions, energy, and you're going to be exhausted. When you align it with who you are, brother, it takes on a life of its own. The chances of you reaching that become so incredibly probable that it's almost guaranteed.
Knowing the why and I think finding the identity is important. Maybe really when you go deeper, when you do the research, right, for whatever identity that you're trying to do, maybe you didn't want that at all, right? Maybe when you get to that point, you really hate it. And I'm serious too. When whatever that might be, maybe in martial arts or maybe in life, in business, you might not want to be that person. Maybe you want to be a world-class athlete, martial artists. We want to win tournaments. But do you really ready for that lifestyle? You can't eat whatever that you want. You probably won't have much of a life outside of training, right? You have to align yourself with so many routines, right? Do you really want to do that? And I think it's nice to dream about it sometime, right? Dream about it and say, no, that's not really for me. Is that acceptable?
Exactly. That's so beautifully said. And exactly why we just talked about this point. If you don't know who you are, it's nearly impossible to understand what you want in this lifetime. As a matter of fact, if you notice that you set a goal and you start chasing that goal, and all of a sudden you go, no, that's not really what I wanted. And then you do it again and you keep doing that pattern. The thing that's missing in that whole strategy is the identity statement that you get to create. Now, here's the important part that's in that book. You're not here to discover who you are. The absolute famous people on this planet, celebrities, absolutely successful people, people that you know and admire, they have this one secret. They know they're not here to discover who they are. They're here to create who they are
Mm.
so that you and I get to create. And when I say, by the way, I've done this so many years, for 25 years, every couple of years, I go and do something crazy. Like I've lived most of my life underneath the water or on the water growing up in the Florida Keys. I have never ice skated in my life. And when I was 40 years old, I decided to play hockey because I wanted to do something. I know exactly. It's like, you're
Nice.
crazy. And well, that's just one of the other gazillion things that I've done in this lifetime. Again, just for myself, so I could experience that. But I didn't even know how to put my skates on. I remember this teenage boy helping me put my skates on the very first time I got on the ice. And I literally flopped on the ice to be able to get. 18 months later, we won the summer championship and I was the assist leader. That's from somebody going, I've never ice skated before in my life, competing against people who have been skating their whole lives. How do you do that? Well, how you do that is you create an identity and then a clear plan of action. And then you go hire the best coach you possibly can and you get to work and you don't stop until you reach that level of experience.
With your movement that you learned from Aikido, it was interested to really see you in action in hockey. How do you can you do those moves right with Aikido deflecting in ice
Yeah,
hockey? I'm
you
now
know,
I'm interested to see that.
me too. As a matter of fact, I better go look at some film again about see how I did that because I will tell you that I was skating against people who've been skating all their lives. And the fact that I wasn't killed in some of those situations, I definitely must have been blending with them a lot more successfully than I thought. So I'm gonna have to go back and find those films.
I always come up with questions like that. On the theme of the book, you kind of mentioned that the knowledge doesn't mean much unless it's lived. How does martial arts help you understand that, or is it coming from the martial art training at all?
Yeah, I think the best metaphor here is that, everyone, the idea behind becoming a black belt in any art is a very remarkable thing. There's no question about it. And the respect that I have from anybody who's dedicated their lives to that kind of thing. The truth is that a lot of our ideas is that we could go down to a store, department store, and we could buy a black belt, right? And you can
Yeah.
just put it on. You've got the knowledge. You're wearing it. Everybody sees you're wearing it. Everybody sees your knowledge base. You tell your knowledge. You talk about your knowledge. Let me just tell you how great of a black belt I am. But as soon as you get into a fight, brother, you're getting your butt kicked because you think you're a lot further along in the learning curve simply because you got that black belt on. That's the metaphor of knowledge. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. So when earning that black belt, that's what comes inside of you by building that confidence within you that you can apply that in a pressure situation.
Mm.
If you've just got the black belt, you've never been in that pressure situation. You don't have the experience of what that black belt means. And that's exactly what this concept of knowledge is. It gives you a false sense of confidence that you know what the hell you're talking about when you do not. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. So when earning that black belt, that's what comes inside of you by building that confidence within you that you can apply that in a pressure situation.
Mm.
If you've just got the black belt, you've never been in that pressure situation. You don't have the experience of what that black belt means. And that's exactly what this concept of knowledge is. It gives you a false sense of confidence that you know what the hell you're talking about when you do not.
Yeah, now you mention it, I do notice it's especially in, this state of social media, people could appear to know everything,
Yes, sir.
right? I'm just reading off from the screen, I could know everything. I asked AI, I know everything right now. But when you really put to the test, when you really put to the work, or in our example, right, martial arts, can you use whatever knowledge that you said you have into real life? It doesn't have to be fancy. It's just whatever comes at you. Are you able to respond? Even a lot of people froze. People that I work with sometimes, they know they're from a highly educated background, they've all this on LinkedIn, but when you talk to them, there's really, sorry to say, nothing in the back of that screen.
Totally agree. Yes, and I've experienced that a lot of my life, where I've bought into the expertise of someone because they had the image of it,
Hmm.
right? And then when you really get into the work of it, you see that it's not there, and that's what we're really talking about. This knowledge-based concept that seems to be flooding. Social media is a great example of that. What an amazing vehicle that we have in social media, and look what we've done with it, right? We've just said, "I'm the expert. This is what's happening." These kind of things. Listen, you can feel the difference of an expert. When you walk into a martial arts dojo, man, you can scan that room from the years of experience I have, and I know who the pretenders are and I know who the badasses are instantaneously. Right?
Hmm.
So you can do the same thing in business, and we actually teach those strategies here so that you don't fall in the trap and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing or some other facet, and just realizing that you've been investing in something that's just an empty bucket.
Yeah, for martial arts, I think it just is so crucial to find and align with the right teacher. And I do firmly believe that a good teacher for David might not be a good teacher for Swire. So we each have our own body type, what we wanted to learn, maybe our pain tolerance, right? So there's no right or wrong, but I think the right master, seeing a students, could see what they are good at, what they're not good at, and then the teacher will bring out the best in them. So in my mind, that's the kind of teacher that I want to be, learning from.
There's the age old cliche statement that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? We've all heard this. Well, knowing that you're the student is the first job in that. You've got to identify as a student, not just show up at a dojo, not just show up at business, not just show up somewhere and go, yeah, let's see what's going on here. And oh, I really like this person. You've got to know you so that you can make that determination. Why that you were talking about was so important. And I totally agree with you. Finding the right teachers is something I've been really, really blessed with this lifetime. I am very selective with who I want to be able to teach. I do a lot of research. You're never going to have me working with you unless I know how you've done these experiences, how you do this. And I want to find out from people around you, what's your character like? What's your personality like? Because I will tell you, in some areas of my life, I need someone who pushes me. Like in my weightlifting thing, I have a coach that pushes me like crazy. I don't want to do the same thing in my creative thing. So my publisher isn't a pusher, right? They're just listeners. So in all these different aspects of my life where I'm choosing these masters and teachers and people I want to work with, I'm very selective based upon who I am, not who they are.
Yeah, I think every successful person, whoever field that they're in, surround themselves with people who are better than they are in that particular field. You don't have to be an expert in everything, especially for entrepreneur. You don't always have to be best in martial arts. You don't always have to be the best, but you need to surround with supportive people. People can kind of, in the samurai term, guide you through your journey, right? You can't do it by yourself. It's lonely to go alone.
Beautifully said. As a matter of fact, you will definitely not be able to scale your business at any way, shape, or form, or any kind of volume, or be of service to the masses unless you understand that concept you just talked about. Because if I have to do everything myself because I'm the master of everything, then I'm only going to be very limited in what I can be able to produce and then be in service of. when you start to understand that the real masters of the universe understand who they are, and they can surround themselves with people who are better than what they are, because they don't get jealous, they don't get upset, they don't get mad when someone's better than them.
Mhm.
If you don't know yourself that well, then you're not going to deal in that constructive criticism kind of environment. But those are the people that are successful.
What if listener or people who are in business or in martial arts, they're feeling disconnect from purpose of destiny? What are some of the finding or the inward question that you can suggest that they ask themselves to put them out and maybe find a new purpose or destinies for them?
So the very first thing I would suggest is that, yes, good for you. Awesome that you're having that kind of contemplation. Second part, I would absolutely suggest, and exactly why we wrote that book, is Swords of Illumination. Inside that book, you will go into detail about those kind of questions that you have and how you can structure your life in these different themes, if you will. And every one of those swords has a different engraving about a principle that will bring you to another level of success. These are laws of success. They're undeniable. And when you apply them, you will get to a next level of success. And when you apply them more, you get to the next level. They are universal in their nature. It's because it's not something I created. It's something I've listened to. I've downloaded from different sources of people, listening to different masters, having such exceptional teachers in my life, that being able to put this into this sequence is understanding that your whole life is driven by something very important in your brain that you may not even be aware of. And that's called your subconscious programming. Your
Mm.
subconscious programming manifests 95% of everything that's going on in this outside world. This conscious conversation we're having right now in a very portion of our brain, right? This beta frequency we're sharing with each other. This doesn't change your subconscious programming, which means it doesn't manifest a damn thing. So you can think all the positive things you want. You can say all the positive stuff. You can ask all the great questions. It's not changing anything.
Mm.
If you really want to get to the source of true transformation, manifestation, then you have to understand it's already within you. You just need to know the programming to reprogram that. And in that book, that's what it does.
Nice. That's a really good way to put it. In your training, or if you're a business owner, with all the interaction, all the experience that you have, you already have that in you. Maybe you just need to have a different way, as you're saying, David, to unpack it. Throw your punch in a different way. Jump in a different way if you're feeling stuck. So when you work with business owner or executives, what do you see them struggling the most internally nowadays?
So we have a really unique approach at Samurai Success. Whenever you hire a coach, or we hire Samurai Success, you get not one coach, you get three coaches.
Mm.
Each one of them is a specialist, just like a major sports team or something like. So they don't have just one coach; they have a head coach, which is what we have. But then we have something called a design coach and a finance coach.
Yeah.
So our head coach really focuses on the psychology and programming and everything in the Swords of Illumination. That's what we focus on. Our design team really focuses on building the structure and process to be able to support that process and vision. And then the finance team is really designed to be able to show you, hey, when we have this kind of thinking and belief system and this kind of process, this is the kind of results we're getting. So we put those together and show you through a personal verified experience that this is how your business is working this way. For example, if you do this thing with this mindset and you do that process, you get this result. If you have this mindset and you do this process, you get this result. Which result do you like best? And that's how we showcase to the entrepreneurs and how it becomes their idea, because they're like, well, I like that one better. Well, then let's go that way. No more fighting, man. No more combat. It's Aikido. It's verbal, physical, mental, emotional Aikido. So we've blended this fully into our business.
Mhm. So from your teaching style, branding, not fighting, right? What do you think is the one that business owner resists the most?
Wow. So two parts of that thing. It's really individualized for every single client but most of them don't like math. Let's just be
Okay.
honest. So that's part of it. But our approach to it is that we're not senseis. We are not teachers in our world. We don't talk to your ego. Where most people show up with their ego, we don't talk to that part of you. We actually
Mm.
talk to your soul. And because I'm talking to your soul, things are going to resonate very differently than they're going to resonate with your ego. And what I mean by that very specifically is we don't teach things. we remind you of what you already know, because there is a master, Swire, in each one of us that we have forgotten. And we've layered it on top with this mud and this crap because of all these expectations and all these performance, ideologies and things like this, that you have forgotten the best part of you. We uncover that part. That's what the head coach is really designed to be able to do. And then we then show you through design work and through financials that by doing these things this way, you actually get a better result than what you thought was going to get you the result. Because the reason you're coming to us is because what you're doing isn't working and it isn't getting
Right.
where you want to go. So we can't continue with that process. We've got to make some changes. And that's probably the part that resists the most. The math part is here, but the reprogramming part, which is all you, we have to have your permission to be able to have you change your programming. And we do that through practice, right? Just like in the martial arts dojo, you're going to learn that technique over and over again to be able to do it. For example, people don't like to use calendars, especially entrepreneurs. It's one of the fundamental things we do because calendar and planning and scheduling are all differential things in our world. And planning gives you a year-long perspective, and the calendar gives you a daily, hourly, weekly, monthly kind of perspective. But your brain works differently with those two perspectives. But by showing you the big picture, the entrepreneur loves the planner. What they don't like is the calendar. Oh, I've got to now go make that planner work, right? I got the plans that I have to do that. So integrating that and seeing that, well, you know what? If I don't want to do it, then I have to hire someone else to do it. And that's great because then they understand that the business requires certain activities, tasks, and projects getting completed. If you don't want to do them, great. Then you're going to have to pay someone else to do them. And we show you how to do it.
I can see the relation with, David, you learn from Aikido and then from your coaching business. You break down, for example, a really challenging move. In order to do that, you're not able to do that today, but by working on maybe your footwork or maybe some of your flexibility, or maybe you got to be stronger, right? Then you're able to do it. You are helping client do exactly that. That's why, you're in the business that you're in.
Yes, sir. Great example of that is, it's like dancing, right? You said so beautifully with hockey. Dancing is a great metaphor for, martial art because Aikido sometimes looks like that. And I will tell you, the very first time you start dancing, you have these little steps that you have on the floor. You got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have a box trot. Let's say, for example, it's a technique. It's a martial arts, a kata. And you've just got to, by the way, you're looking down on the floor going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You're not looking around where the combat's happening. You're looking at the floor, right? And you're in trouble if you're going to do that in the street. So now the first step of that is that 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they do something crazy where they go, now we're going to start adding some music. Oh my gosh, that's a whole new layer because now I got to listen to it. I got to put the beat into 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And oh my God, now they add a partner. Oh, now I got to think about them and your brain goes freaking out, right? So it's the same thing with business. It's about chunking it down to the basics. So you really have a foundation for understanding. And then you build on top of that because your foundation is everything. If you build your big giant building on really shaky foundation, it's going to crash. And you see that over and over, Swire, in this world that you see about these companies that are multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies that are here and then they're gone. What happened? And by the way, all that money was on paper. They were worth billions of dollars on paper, and now they're gone. What happened? Well, they didn't build it on that strong foundation.
So with your coaching style, I think it's very unique. And, are there times that you do feel like there's a good fit for coaching client and sometimes there's not a good fit? Like, do you also pick yourself as far as your coaching business?
Oh my gosh, yes. As a matter of fact, it's critical to be able to do this. After when you've done something for as long as we have, which is 28 years, you start to realize some themes, right? You start really getting good stuff, and then you could pick your head up and look around. The truth is we can't work with everybody. As a matter of fact, we know that there's two aspects that we have to have. And one is commitment. You've got to be totally committed to where you want to be able to go in your business. There's no question about that. So that means we don't work with startups. Startups are fundamentally not within our realm of being able to help people because until you've worked for about 3 years in your own business, you think you know it all. You're not open to coaching, right? And you're going to have to go through those trials and tribulations and failures that go along and some successes that go along with that. But you're going to have to get to a place where like, man, I'm not going to be able to do this on my own. That's where we can be a first step. Second step is you got to be committed to where you want to go, because it's hard work.
Mm-hmm.
There's guys, listen, this is the dojo. You're not going to get out of here without some injuries. You're going to have to be healthy, and you're going to have to keep persevere. You're going to have to work. So that commitment that you bring to the table is the most important thing. The second part is that we've got to be a good fit for that vision and that commitment. And we take you through a process, a 5-step process that is lengthy. As a matter of fact, it's not convenient sometimes. And everybody goes, "Oh, Dave, your thing is not convenient. It's not, not fast. It's not built for that." We're not looking to do those things. As a matter of fact, if we maxed out my entire vision for the next 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to work with 1,000 clients on this entire universe. That's it. We work with 20 clients per pod. That's it. And every business coach, every consultant we've ever had is like, "That's not enough. You're not monetizing." I don't care. I want the quality. The quality is more important, commitment to who I am, than this money crap. Money is easy for me. It's always been easy for me. I really want to help people and society and humanity get to the next level. And this is how I want to approach it.
Thank you for the great answer. That was a scary question for me to ask, because I've asked that question before on other people that I've talked to. They said everybody. So thank you so much for breaking it all down for you. That means that you do really go with what you're doing for. You know your identity. You know what you're trying to do as a business, and you're actually able to articulate in detailed points, what you just answered me with all the points that or ideal client that you want to work with. For me personally too, working with people, I know that we can work with everyone. I would rather to work with people that appreciate what we do, pay full price of what we do, and then they keep coming back. That's a really good point to have, and goes back to the training too. You can't train in everything, right? You could only, unfortunately, pick a field that you really go into and to be good at. Then you have to really, going back with what you're saying, find out really who you are before you can answer that question. So it was a great question, but thank you so much for answering it, the way that you just did.
Yes, sir. Believe me, it took a lot of pain, energy, and effort to get to that answer. So believe me, it was not easy to do this, because in my mind, of course, I want to help everyone. I don't want to create an elite format. But I will tell you that after the years, we've noticed that if you don't have those two elements of commitment and fit, we're not going to work for you. And we don't want to do that. Why waste your time? Go find another coach to be able to help you with that. We're a very specialized niche in the marketplace. We know who we can be in service of, and you've got to be ready for that.
Thank you so much, David. I know that I could ask you a question in the next 2 hours and we're still going to have a good conversation. I'm not going to do that. So for listener who wanted to learn more about you, both in the martial art world and the business coaching world, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
So samuraisuccess.com is the best way to be able to reach us. It's a fundamental part of our website. And within that, it connects you to all kinds of things with Instagram and LinkedIn, YouTube. And by the way, if you're really interested in what you've heard today and it really resonates with you, there is about 150 videos that we've produced over the last couple of years that give you all kinds of information. So if you really want to dive into this before you reach out to us, great. That's better on your part, because then we can know how we can be of service. Once you do that, then make sure you get on the website and reach out to us. There's phone numbers there. There's connections to be able to do that. But if you're really committed, especially for 2026, do something different this year. Reach out to us and see if we can be of service.
Thank you so much, David, for coming on to the show today.
Thank you, Swire. Thanks so much.
Today's guest is David Olcott, lifelong martial artist, Aikido practitioner, executive coach, founder of Samurai Success, and author of Swords of Illumination. In this episode, we explore how Aikido and Shugyō principles shape leadership, balance, and decision-making in life and business, and why knowledge only matters when it's lived, not just learned. Let's get started.